Well, again, I don't want to be an alarmist, and I believe, yes, it seems like uh, authoritarian tendencies, but the United States, but that's also we see like in many countries of the world, like for example, in Hungary, which is traditionally a democratic country, or in Turkey with leaders like Erdogan or Orban. But I do believe, I do have a deep faith in American Constitution and a separation of powers. Again, we will see how the lawsuits will develop. So I would not be like an alarmist and say that. I mean, yes, we are witnessing, I would say, some kind of a constitutional crisis, but we will see what the outcome will be.
The new U.S. administration under Donald Trump has signaled a shift in priorities, stating that the U.S. is no longer primarily focused on European security, as you already mentioned. What impact will this have on NATO and on Ukraine defense?
It will have a serious impact. I think that we may actually see a kind of a split within NATO across the line, which exists already today, because there are countries which they're never going to give up on Ukraine. I think it's Poland, it's Scandinavian countries, these are the three Baltic states, the United Kingdom. But there are countries which have a much more pro-Russian population, which is, like, first of all, Germany, where there is a whole phenomenon of what is called the Putin-Versteher, the one who understands Putin, which emerged during the annexation of Crimea. Then France will see what happens with the presidential election, I believe in 27, with the right wing, the French rally, the Le Pen's party, which has today a very young and charismatic leader, a new leader. So I think we may see some kind of what actually Putin really wanted to see, the division of Europe. We may see that, and the United States withdrawing its unconditional support. So a lot will depend, I think, on nuclear powers like France and the United Kingdom. And it may, of course, have serious consequences for Ukraine in terms of
What
help.
do you mean by that, France and United Kingdom?
Well, because they're nuclear power, and you have to definitely to stand against Russia. I mean, someone needs to provide that kind of security. And I think the United Kingdom is probably the best ally of Ukraine and Europe, because whether left or more of a right, I think it's very committed to help to Ukraine. France is a more worrisome case. Again, we'll see who wins in 2027, and I think Le Pen's party does have a chance to win that election. That will have very grim consequences if that happens.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ruled out NATO membership for Ukraine. How does this align with NATO's long-term strategy, and what alternatives does Ukraine have for security guarantees?
I would say that off the record, like after the annexation of Crimea, there was no serious consideration of Ukraine becoming a member of NATO, because the countries like Turkey and Hungary would never accept it, and it needs to be accepted by every single NATO member. If you remember, even the acceptance of Sweden was blocked for a while by Turkey because of the Swedish support to some of the allegedly Kurdish separatists. So I don't think it was ever on the agenda. It wasn't spoken, at least by the American administration, but I think it was implied. In terms of security, I think the best guarantee, the U.S. president already said that he doesn't want to see any U.S. military in Ukraine. I think the only security which actually can be significant are European troops. So from countries like France, Germany, Sweden, UK on the line of control if there is a ceasefire.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So can European nations support us, in a proper way, military?
Well, on the line of control, if there are troops, of course, that would be a very serious, even if Trump recalls, because he said he doesn't want to apply if there are European troops, but it's still he won't call Article 5. So which means that the United States doesn't want to go to war, even if it happens, say, and there are European troops in Ukraine. But I do think that there is a chance. I won't speculate which countries would help. I've already mentioned that there are some countries which are definitely very pro-Ukrainian. And the best way would be to have a combination of troops and military from different European countries on the line of control, because that would, of course, create a huge security risk, even if it's not NATO, but basically Russia would go to war with these countries if their militaries are involved.
And now another moment that bothers me a lot,
Yeah.
that the U.S. position now suggests that restoring Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is unrealistic. Does this signal a broader shift in Western policy towards Ukraine? And what risks does this pose for international law?
Yes, this is the case. And again, I think off the record, there was a realization in the United States and NATO, even before the full-scale invasion in 22, that it's very unlikely that Ukraine would be able to get Crimea back, at least under Putin. It does provide definitely a very dangerous precedent. We are basically back to pre-World War II or maybe even pre-World War I situation when this kind of territorial grabs are tolerated. But at the same time, there is a more optimistic analogy, if you remember, of the Winter War with Finland. Finland lost a very substantial part of its territory, and also with their population, this Finno-Ugric people. And they never recall that because they managed to save the country and became a pretty prosperous European country. So yes, it's a dangerous precedent, a very dangerous precedent. But I think Ukraine, I mean, the priority right now, realistically, is to save whatever is possible.
You know what makes me super angry, actually?
Yeah.
That I think that the U.S. defense minister, he said on the recent days that the result of peace deal between Ukraine and Russia won't satisfy neither Zelensky, neither Putin. And I'm like, why the heck we supposed to satisfy the side of the conflict that attacked?
Well, unfortunately, the reality is that Russia still is a nuclear power, extremely nationalist, extremely frightening today. I actually wrote a piece some time ago where I say that Russia never in its history, I think, fought such a horrible war, such a clearly, blatantly aggressive war of aggression. So yeah, we live in a time, I would say, compare it with pre-World War II or pre-World War I. And you know, Fiona Hill, who was a senior advisor on Eurasia, Russia, Ukraine under the first Trump administration, was an extremely educated and balanced woman. She's a student of Richard Pipes at Harvard. She recently said that we are at the beginning of World War III, which I wouldn't like to make such predictions, but she's a serious woman. She's definitely wouldn't say so if she didn't believe so. So this is a very grim situation. I agree with you.
Let's make a little shift from external policy to domestic policy of the U.S. U.S. is facing increasing polarization and political instability. Could internal divisions weaken its ability to be a leader on global security issues, including supporting Ukraine? But you already mentioned it will. And if the U.S. steps back from its global leadership role, who will fill the gap? China, EU, or fragmented multipolar order?
So the first part of the question, yes, absolutely. The internal divisions and problems in the United States is a big problem for the whole world. And of course, the countries which celebrate it the most are the U.S. adversaries. If you watch the Russian TV, they're absolutely joyful about that situation. And you know, it's very interesting. There was this very famous American diplomat, George Kennan. In 1946, he wrote what became known as the Long Telegram, which he sent from Moscow to the